It all began on the day my father told me never to open the door on the east side. Our house was built in the 1920s, a sprawling wooden structure on the edge of a forgotten Hanover district. I grew up there, and as far back as I can remember, the east door served no purpose. There were no hinges on the outside, no keyhole, no reason for it to exist. Yet the door was always there, right above the staircase, covered by wallpaper that had faded and never quite matched the corridor. When I was 6, I first asked about it. My mother froze. My father looked up from his newspaper and said, "What door?" His tone was sharp enough that I never asked again for years. As I grew older, the oddness became part of the house's rhythm. My family avoided that corner. They cleaned around it but never touched it. Sometimes when the air was still, I could feel a faint hum from behind the wall, like a fridge buried too deep in the house's lungs. Once, I pressed my ear against the wall. It was moist, slow, and steady, like a heartbeat wrapped in cloth. By the time I turned 18, I convinced myself it was just imagination, the result of childhood nerves in an old house groaning under its own weight. Then one stormy night, the wallpaper peeled slightly, and for the first time, I saw the faint outline of a door frame beneath it. My flashlight caught a glint of metal, the edge of the doorknob. I didn't open it. Not then. I just stood there, feeling the pulse behind the wall quicken, as if aware I was watching. The next morning, my mother hummed in the kitchen. I casually asked about the east side of the house. She smiled too wide, like someone pretending not to understand. East side? Oh, that old wall? Best not to mess with it, darling. It's a main support. But her hand trembled as she poured my coffee. That night, I heard whispers from Leela's room, my younger sister. She was speaking to someone, her voice soft and certain. I pressed my ear to her door. But he saw it. He wasn't supposed to see it, she whispered. The next morning, Leela didn't look at me. My father left early and returned at midnight. My mother busied herself cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning. No one mentioned the east door again. Days passed in emptiness. I began to feel the hum even when I was far from it, like an undercurrent in every sound of the house. I saw reflections that didn't match. Once, in the hallway mirror, I saw all 4 of us standing at the dining table, though I was alone in the room. Then came the night of the flickering lights. The hum turned into a low rumble, vibrating through the wooden floor. I walked to the staircase, flashlight shaking in my hand. The wallpaper had peeled further overnight, revealing the entire door now, pale wood, damp to the touch. My breath came out white in the air. I grasped the knob. It was cold, and for a moment I felt it pulse beneath my fingers. I turned it. The door opened inward with a sound like someone exhaling after holding their breath for a century. The room inside was wrong. It was the same size as the corridor, but it felt deeper, wider. The air smelled of dust and damp paper. A single chair sat in the center, facing the far wall. On that wall hung portraits of my family, older versions, eyes hollow, smiles too wide. My own face was missing from the frame. Then I heard the stairs creak behind me. I turned, but the door had vanished. Only smooth wallpaper remained. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment I saw someone sitting in the chair. My father. But he was still downstairs, wasn't he? When the light steadied, the chair was empty again. The hum stopped. I ran back to my room and locked the door. All night, I could hear faint tapping behind the wall, like nails seeking a way out. The next morning, my family acted as if nothing had happened. My mother made pancakes, my father read the newspaper, Leela played quietly with her dolls. Only one thing had changed. There was an extra plate on the table. 5 plates. A dark glass of water. When I asked, my mother said softly, "Don't be rude, darling. We always set a plate for that room." Then she smiled again, too wide. The morning moved like a dream that refused to end. The ticking of the clock sounded slightly off, as if the pendulum had begun keeping time for someone else. Daniel tried to shake the feeling. He stepped outside, inhaling the damp air left by the storm. The garden was soaked. Puddles mirrored the gray sky. But when he looked back at the house, the east wall appeared different. The paint was fresh, newer than the rest, as if someone had quietly repainted it overnight. He called for his father, but only silence answered. Even the birds avoided the roofline. At lunch, Margaret served soup with a smile that was just too wide. Her hands trembled as she set the bowls on the table. Daniel wanted to ask about the missing plate, but every time he tried, his mother's eyes met his and the words vanished. He ate mechanically. Each spoonful tasted thick with dust. When he looked down, the bowl was empty, though he did not remember finishing it. Afterwards, Leela tugged on his sleeve. "They're pretending harder today," she whispered. "Maybe the house likes it." Daniel tried to laugh, but the sound was hollow. "What do you mean?" She looked past him toward the staircase. "It hums when we talk about it. Didn't you hear it last night?" He had, but admitting it felt dangerous. "Go play outside," he said, forcing a smile. Leela shook her head. "The swing's gone," she murmured. "There's just a rope." That night, Daniel barely slept. The hum rose and fell like breathing. At 3 a.m., he couldn't bear it any longer. He left his room, bare feet on the cold floor, and followed the sound. The house felt larger than usual, hallways stretching longer than they should. Pictures tilted on the walls as he passed, faces shifting subtly, expressions softening into pity. When he reached the landing, the thin line of light was waiting for him again, brighter now, almost alive. As he stepped closer, he smelled rain, though the air was dry. The wallpaper bulged and tore silently, revealing the hidden door once more. This time, the doorknob turned before he touched it. The room inside looked identical to before, yet something had changed. The chair was gone. In its place sat a small wooden box, carved with the Hanover crest. A faint melody, almost like a lullaby, seeped from the cracks around its lid. He knelt and opened it. Inside lay a stack of photographs, hundreds of them, edges curling with age. Each photo showed the same dining table, the same family, but always with slight differences. Sometimes an extra person, sometimes one missing. In the newest photo, taken only hours before, there were still 4 figures. His own face was blurred, dissolving at the edges. He dropped the photo. The lullaby faltered, then stopped. Behind him, the door swung shut again. He reached for the knob, but the wall was smooth. The box remained in his hands, heavy now, humming faintly as if a heartbeat lived inside. He hid it beneath his bed. For days afterwards, the family behaved as though nothing had happened. His parents smiled too easily. Leela spoke less and less. Once, he saw his mother standing in the hallway whispering into the air, answering a voice Daniel couldn't hear. Another time, he found his father sitting at the piano, pressing a single key over and over, eyes unfocused. The house listened. It always did. On the 6th day, Daniel decided to leave. He packed a small bag and slipped out before dawn, the box still under his arm.
The front door opened without a sound. He walked until the house was hidden behind the fog of the valley. Yet the farther he went, the more the landscape seemed to repeat. Same trees, same fence, same gravel path. When he finally looked back, the house was there again, only a few paces away. He laughed, or tried to. The air swallowed the sound. He turned the box over in his hands. The carvings had changed. The crest was gone, replaced by faint letters that spelled his own name. Beneath it, a new line appeared, etched deep as though by invisible fingers. Pretend you never left. The hum began again, low and constant, coming from everywhere at once. The sky darkened, though the sun was still shining somewhere behind the clouds. He walked faster, then ran, but each step only brought him back to the gate. The front door stood open, waiting. Inside, the kitchen smelled of soup. 4 plates on the table again. His mother looked up and smiled as if nothing was strange. "There you are," she said softly. "We were worried you'd missed supper." Leela sat across from him, head tilted. "Did you find it?" she asked. "Find what?" "The other room," she whispered. "The one we're not supposed to talk about." He froze. "There's another?" She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "There's always another." From somewhere beneath the floor, a second hum joined the first, deeper and older. The house trembled gently, like something stretching in its sleep. Daniel looked toward the staircase. Now, 2 lines of light glowed there, one above the other, both pulsing faintly, like twin heartbeats. He didn't move. The clock chimed once, twice, then stopped mid-swing. His father sighed. "You should eat," he said. "It helps to pretend." Daniel stared at his bowl. Inside floated a single photograph instead of soup. It showed him standing exactly where he was now, gazing down at the same image. He blinked. The picture rippled. In the reflection of its glossy surface, something behind him smiled.
The next morning felt wrong. Daniel woke with the sense that something in the house had shifted. The clock in the hallway ticked unevenly, slower, heavier, as if counting for someone else. He descended the stairs and looked at the east wall. The paint seemed brighter, freshly applied, though he was certain no one had touched it. He called for his father, but silence answered. Even the birds avoided the roof. At lunch, his mother served soup, her smile unnaturally wide. Her hands trembled as she placed the bowls on the table. Daniel wanted to ask about the extra plate that had appeared, but every time he tried, his mother's gaze made the words vanish. He ate mechanically, every bite tasting bland and heavy. When he looked down, the bowl was empty, though he didn't remember finishing. Lila tugged at his sleeve. "They're pretending stronger today," she whispered. "Maybe the house likes it." Daniel tried to smile, but it felt hollow. "What do you mean?" She glanced at the staircase. "It hums when we talk about it. Didn't you hear it last night?" Daniel nodded slowly, admitting it felt dangerous. "Go play outside," he said, forcing a grin. Lila shook her head. "The swing's gone," she murmured. "Only a rope remains." That night, Daniel barely slept. The hum rose and fell like breathing. At 3 a.m., he could no longer endure it. He left his room, bare feet on the cold floor, following the sound. The house felt larger than usual. Hallways stretched endlessly. Pictures tilted on the walls as he passed,
faces shifting subtly into expressions of pity. When he reached the landing, a thin line of light awaited him again, brighter, almost alive. As he stepped closer, he smelled rain, though the air was dry. Wallpaper bulged and tore silently, revealing the hidden door once more. This time, the doorknob turned before he touched it. The room inside looked the same as before, yet something had changed. The chair was gone. In its place sat a small wooden box carved with the Hanover crest. A faint melody leaked from its cracks, almost like a lullaby. He knelt and opened it. Inside lay a stack of photographs, hundreds, edges curling with age. Each photo showed the same dining table, the same family, but always with slight differences. Sometimes an extra person, sometimes one missing. In the newest photo, taken only hours before, there were still 4 figures. His own face was blurred, dissolving at the edges. He dropped the photo. The lullaby faltered, then stopped. Behind him, the door swung shut again. He reached for the knob, but the wall was smooth. The box remained in his hands, heavy, humming faintly, as if a heartbeat lived inside. He hid it beneath his bed. For days, the family acted as if nothing had happened. His parents smiled too easily. Lila spoke less and less. He once saw his mother standing in the hallway, whispering to the air, answering a voice Daniel could not hear. Another time, his father sat at the piano, pressing one key repeatedly, eyes unfocused. The house listened. It always did. On the 6th day, Daniel decided to leave. He packed a small bag and slipped out before dawn, the box still under his arm. The front door opened without a sound. He walked until the house was hidden behind the valley fog. Yet the further he went, the more the landscape repeated. Same trees, same fence, same gravel path. When he finally looked back, the house was there again, only a few steps away. He laughed, or tried to. The air swallowed the sound. He turned the box over in his hands. The carvings had changed. The crest was gone, replaced by faint letters that spelled his own name. Below it, a new line appeared, etched deep as though by invisible fingers. Pretend you never left. The hum began again, low and constant, coming from everywhere at once. The sky darkened, though the sun still shone behind clouds. He walked faster, then ran, but each step brought him back to the gate. The front door stood open, waiting. Inside, the kitchen smelled of soup. 4 plates sat on the table again. His mother looked up and smiled as if nothing were strange. "There you are," she said softly. "We were worried you'd missed supper." Lila sat across from him, head tilted. "Did you find it?" she whispered. "Find what?" "The other room. The one we're not supposed to talk about." He froze. "There's another?" She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "There's always another." From somewhere beneath the floor, a second hum joined the first, deeper and older. The house trembled gently, like something stretching in its sleep. Daniel looked toward the staircase. 2 lines of light glowed there now, one above the other, pulsing faintly, like twin heartbeats. He did not move. The clock chimed once, twice, then stopped, mid-swing. His father sighed. "You should eat," he said. "It helps to pretend." Daniel stared at his bowl. Inside floated a single photograph instead of soup. It showed him standing exactly where he was now, staring down at the same image. He blinked. The picture rippled, and in the glossy reflection, something behind him smiled.
The next morning, Daniel woke to a strange stillness. The house seemed quieter, as if holding its breath. Every step down the stairs echoed up unusually loud, bouncing off walls that felt farther apart than the day before. He glanced at the east door. Its paint shimmered faintly, a hue between gray and white, as if shifting in the corner of his eye. His mother was at the kitchen counter, humming softly. She moved slowly, deliberately, placing bowls of oatmeal on the table. Daniel hesitated, glancing at the fifth plate that had appeared overnight. It was always there now, a silent invitation. "You're late," his father said casually, reading the paper. "Didn't sleep well?" Daniel nodded, unsure if he could speak about what had been happening. The hum from the walls returned, faint at first, then growing steadily, vibrating through the floorboards. Lila leaned close. "It watches more when you notice it," she whispered. "You can't pretend anymore." Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to ask what she meant, but the words wouldn't come. The house seemed to tense, as if listening. By noon, he could no longer resist. He went to the staircase leading to the east door. The wallpaper had peeled further overnight, curling at the edges. The doorframe glimmered faintly in the light, as if alive. He reached out. The doorknob turned smoothly beneath his fingers, ice cold, sending shivers up his arm. He opened the door. The room beyond had changed. No chair, no box, no photographs. Instead, it was a vast empty space, stretching infinitely in darkness. The air was damp, smelling of old paper and something else, metallic like blood. A soft whisper echoed, "Daniel, Daniel." He stepped inside. The floor beneath him rippled like water, sending shivers through his legs. Shadows began to twist along the walls, forming shapes that were almost human. He wanted to run, but his feet felt rooted. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, thin, with eyes hollow as pits, and a smile impossibly wide. It mimicked his movements exactly. Daniel raised his hands. The figure raised its hands. He moved forward. It moved forward. Every motion mirrored, until he realized it was not a reflection, but something else. "Who are you?" he whispered. No answer. Only the hum, louder now, resonating through every bone. He tried to retreat, but the doorway had vanished. Only endless darkness remained. The whispers grew into voices chanting his name, overlapping, coming from every direction. "Daniel, why did you come? You shouldn't be here." Panic rose in his chest. He fell to his knees, clutching the box under his arm. It vibrated, warm now, pulsing like a heart. He opened it. Inside, the photos had multiplied, hundreds more, swirling and fluttering like living pages. Each one depicted him in this room, in this space, screaming silently, his own expressions of fear captured in every frame. A cold wind circled him. The figure advanced, slowly, deliberately. Its smile widened, and Daniel felt a pull in his chest as if the shadows themselves were drawing him in. Then, from behind him, a familiar voice. "Daniel, stop!" He turned. Lila stood at the doorway, eyes wide, hands trembling. "You can't let it take you. Pretend like it's not real." He hesitated, then remembered the lessons learned over the past week, how the house thrived on attention, how pretending kept it at bay. He shut his eyes, forced a smile, and whispered, "I don't see anything. Nothing at all." The shadows froze. The figure blinked once, then vanished. The hum softened, fading into the background. The doorway reappeared, wallpaper smooth and undisturbed. Daniel stumbled back into the hallway, gasping for air. The house felt quiet, but not safe. He knew the east room still existed, somewhere, always waiting. And the fifth plate remained on the table, a silent reminder. Some doors should never be noticed, some rooms never opened. That night, Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The hum had returned, softer, almost comforting.
but he knew it would grow again, that he would hear it calling him back, and that the room his family pretended didn't exist would never truly disappear. He closed his eyes and whispered a promise. "I will pretend."
The following days passed in a fragile routine. Daniel moved through the house like a ghost, careful to speak only when necessary, careful to avoid glancing at the east wall. The hum was always there, a faint, omnipresent vibration that threaded through the floors and walls. Sometimes it rose, almost like breathing, and Daniel would stop everything, pretending, as he had learned. Lila was quieter than ever, often staring at the corners where the walls met the floor. "It likes attention," she whispered once. "Don't give it any." Daniel nodded, though the warning chilled him. Every step, every sound in the house now felt like a test. He noticed details he never had before, the way wallpaper seemed to shimmer under light, the subtle creak of floors that should have been silent, shadows that lingered too long. One evening, after dinner, Daniel found himself drawn to the staircase. The east door loomed ahead, subtle and ominous. He felt the old tug in his chest, the pull of curiosity that he had fought for so long. But before he could reach for the knob, Lila grabbed his arm. "You can't. Not tonight. Not alone." Her words were enough to halt him, but the house had begun to thrum louder, impatiently. The walls seemed to breathe around him, expanding and contracting. Daniel could feel it reaching for him, a pressure at his chest that almost made him stagger. He closed his eyes, repeating the mantra he had learned. "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The hum slowed, the pressure eased. When he opened his eyes, the door was gone again, replaced with smooth wallpaper. He stumbled back to his room, heart hammering, but the box beneath his bed vibrated softly. Daniel opened it and saw the photographs, still hundreds of them, each showing slight variations of his family in the house. In one, his mother's eyes were hollow. In another, Lila was missing entirely. In another, the house itself seemed to lean in toward the dining table. Daniel understood something he hadn't before. The house didn't just want attention. It wanted him to see, to remember, to acknowledge it. That was its power. The nights became longer. Every sound in the house, a floorboard creaking, the whisper of wind through the eaves, was amplified. Shadows moved against walls where none should exist, and always, always, the east door pulsed with quiet energy, waiting. One night, Daniel woke to find the box floating at the foot of his bed, the photographs spilled across the floor, each showing a room he didn't recognize. Figures moved in impossible ways, bending space, standing in places that shouldn't exist. From the hallway came footsteps, heavy, deliberate. He recognized the rhythm, his father's gait. But when he peeked out, the hall was empty. The hum grew louder. Daniel's stomach dropped. It was no longer just a vibration, it was alive. Something in the house had noticed his hesitation, and it wanted more than to be ignored. He clutched the box and fled down the stairs. The front door appeared before him, inviting, the path clear. He stepped outside, feeling the cool night air, thinking he was safe. Then he heard it, a whisper from inside the house. "Don't leave. You're part of it now." Daniel ran into the darkness beyond the yard, the house looming behind him. Yet even as he ran, he knew he had not escaped. The east door still existed, the room still waited, and the hum would follow him wherever he went. He stopped in the clearing and breathed. The box was still in his hands, heavy with unseen weight. Daniel looked back. The house was there, unchanged, eternal. He realized something terrifying. The family, the plates, the hum, the door, none of it was going to end. He had entered a world where pretending was survival, and he would have to pretend forever. The East Room, the room his family pretended didn't exist, waited, patient, endless, watching.
Days turned into nights and back again.
and Daniel's life became a careful rhythm of observation and avoidance. The house seemed alive in ways that defied logic. Every corner could conceal movement. Every shadow could stretch longer than it should. The hum of the east room never ceased. It had become a pulse in his chest as much as in the house itself. He tried to occupy himself with chores, reading, or even wandering the garden, but the door was always in his peripheral vision. Sometimes he could swear it glimmered, like a faint silver line just beyond reality. And always, in the quiet, he could hear it calling him, soft, insistent, "Daniel, Daniel." Lila had grown even quieter. At times, she would vanish into the house for hours and return without a word, clutching something invisible in her hands. Once, Daniel asked her where she went. She only smiled, wide and unnatural, and whispered, "I keep it satisfied." Daniel had no idea what she meant, but he suspected the house required more than silence. It required obedience, attention, a recognition of its existence that he was terrified to give. One evening, the hum grew different. It was sharper, higher-pitched, almost melodic, yet it carried a menace that sent shivers down Daniel's spine. He walked to the staircase again, heart pounding. The east door shimmered faintly through the wallpaper, pulsing with an unspoken heartbeat. He reached out, but Leela's hand caught his. "Not yet," she warned. "Tonight is dangerous. It wants you unprepared." The hum became louder, filling the hallway, vibrating through the walls and floors. Daniel pressed himself against the wall, eyes closed, repeating his mantra, "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The sound slowed, though it never stopped. When he opened his eyes, the wallpaper was smooth. The door was gone again. Relief washed over him, but only briefly. The box beneath his bed began to hum. He opened it to find the photographs had changed. Faces he recognized were now distorted, smiling with impossibly wide mouths, eyes deep and hollow. Some photographs showed him inside the East Room, yet these images were not memories, they were warnings. Daniel understood the truth. The room wasn't just a room, it was a space outside reality, a fragment of the house that existed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. It could shape what was real, what was remembered, and it was patient, always patient. That night, Daniel could not sleep. The hum persisted, soft but relentless. He swore he heard whispers from within his walls, phrases that weren't quite words. Stay, pretend, belong. He tried to ignore it, but even as he lay in bed, he felt a cold presence near his door. Something moved, brushing against the floorboards, stretching toward him. He held the box tight, heart pounding, as the room's hum grew to a roar inside a skull. The shadows in his room lengthened unnaturally, converging toward the box. Then, silence. Daniel opened his eyes to find himself alone. Leela had vanished. The box lay at the foot of his bed, vibrating faintly. He looked toward the staircase. Nothing. The east door was gone, once again hidden behind wallpaper that appeared entirely normal. But he knew the truth. It was always there, waiting, watching. And Daniel understood now that the room was patient and it did not forgive. The next day, the house returned to its eerie normalcy. His mother cooking, his father reading, Leela silent. But the hum remained, a constant reminder. Daniel had no illusions. One day he would have to confront the East Room. And when that day came,
He would either survive or disappear like the shadows it sent to tempt him. For now, he pretended. Because pretending was the only way to live inside a house that remembered everything, even things that never happened.
The nights were heavier. Daniel felt the house shifting around him, subtly at first, like a tide of shadows creeping along walls. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind through the eaves made his skin crawl. He began to sense a rhythm to it, a heartbeat that matched the hum of the east room. Lila had grown strangely composed. She no longer whispered warnings, but merely observed him, her wide eyes unblinking as if cataloging his every thought. She seemed part of the house now, a messenger or perhaps a ward of its strange power. One night, Daniel awoke to a faint glow seeping through the crack at the base of his door. The hum was louder, vibrating against the walls and floorboards like a storm contained inside the house. He forced himself out of bed, clutching the box, now warm to the touch. The east door appeared in the hallway, shimmering faintly through the wallpaper. Daniel hesitated, feeling the familiar pull, the dangerous allure. He knew the house wanted him to open it, to step inside. But something deeper, primal fear, kept him rooted. "You can't run forever," a voice whispered, and Daniel realized it was the house itself speaking, its tone both ancient and personal. He closed his eyes, gripping the box tightly, and tried to recall Lila's words. Pretend, pretend, pretend. Slowly, deliberately, he walked past the door, avoiding its gaze, and returned to his room. The hum softened, fading to a low thrum. But the next day, the room found another way to reach him. The photographs in the box had changed. Faces moved slightly, blinking, smiling wider than should be possible. Shadows in the images stretched across the paper, and Daniel could swear they whispered his name. Some photos showed the east room open, with figures in them that he did not recognize reaching out to him. By nightfall, he understood the house had evolved. It was no longer merely a passive observer. It wanted participation, acknowledgement. It wanted him to notice and fear. And if he faltered, the east room would expand, creeping into the edges of his life. That night, Daniel could not sleep. The hum pulsed stronger than ever, and from the far corner of his room, he saw movement, shadows pooling in unnatural patterns. He clutched the box, whispering over and over, "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The shadows coalesced into a vague form, humanoid yet fluid, flickering at the edges. The hum intensified, vibrating in his chest. He tried to stand, tried to face it, but fear held him in place. From behind, Lila appeared, her eyes wide, almost glowing. She gestured urgently, urging him to remain calm, to pretend. Daniel nodded, swallowing panic, and forced a smile. The shadows hesitated, then receded slightly, as though respecting the act of denial. The hum dropped to a faint, insistent pulse, and the room fell silent. Daniel realized then the east room did not require physical entry. Its power was subtle, invasive, and psychological. It could reach into every corner of the house, every thought, every fear. The box, the photographs, the whispers, they were all extensions of the room, tools to draw him closer. And yet, by pretending, Daniel could stave it off. For now. But he knew, deep in his bones, that the room was patient. And patience, he realized, in a place like this, was eternal.
Days passed with a strained silence. Daniel moved through the house carefully, each step measured, each glance controlled. The hum was a constant companion now, a low vibration that pressed against his chest, his skull, his bones. Sometimes it felt almost comforting, a reminder that the house was alive and that pretending kept him safe. But the East Room's presence was growing bolder. Subtle distortions appeared in the walls, as though the house were stretching, warping. Shadows no longer simply lurked at the edges. They crept along surfaces, pooling unnaturally in corners. Daniel could feel the air shift whenever the door's influence approached. One evening, after dinner, he noticed the fifth plate, always there now, shimmered faintly under the lamp's light. The edges of the plate blurred, as if it weren't fully real. Daniel shivered, sensing the room's reach expanding. Lila, unusually still, watched him. Her eyes seemed to see more than she could describe, tracking shapes that weren't there. She whispered, "It's testing you. You have to pretend. Stronger this time." The hum rose in intensity, pulsing rhythmically. Daniel knew it wasn't just sound, it was presence. The east door shimmered faintly, wallpaper rippling like water. He felt the tug in his chest, the pull of curiosity and dread that had followed him since the first glimpse. He gripped the box, its weight grounding him, and closed his eyes. It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there. He forced his steps forward, passing the door without touching it, ignoring the shimmering outline. A sudden gust of wind swept the hallway, though all windows were closed. The hum spiked, a sharp vibration that reverberated through his bones. Shadows along the walls began to twist, forming vague humanoid shapes. Whispers rose from the walls, overlapping, frantic. "Daniel! Daniel!" He froze, feeling the pressure of countless eyes upon him. The photographs in the box vibrated softly, the images moving subtly. Faces smiled wider, eyes hollow, stretching across the paper. One image in particular made his stomach drop. It showed Daniel standing in the East Room, looking terrified, reaching for the door that he had yet to open. The shadows convulsed, advancing slowly toward him. Daniel clutched the box to his chest, whispering the mantra, "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The shadows halted, swaying, uncertain. The hum softened, then dropped to a faint thrum. The doorway shimmered one last time, then vanished entirely. The hallway appeared normal again. Daniel exhaled, though he knew relief was temporary. The house had demonstrated its power, showing that it could manipulate perception, shadows, and fear itself. And it had reminded him the East Room existed even when it could not be seen. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The hum persisted, barely audible but relentless. Somewhere in the house, the fifth plate glimmered faintly, a silent reminder. The East Room was patient, and it would wait for him, for his family, forever. Daniel whispered into the darkness, a quiet vow, "I will pretend, always." The shadows did not respond, but he could feel them listening. Time became a strange, blurred thing in the house. Days, nights, and hours seemed to fold over one another, each moment stretching longer than it should. Daniel moved carefully, deliberately through the hallways, avoiding shadows and sounds, always aware of the east door, even when it wasn't there. The hum persisted, subtle but insistent. vibrating through the floors and walls, threading into his thoughts. He could no longer ignore it. It had become part of him, a pulse in his chest that matched the rhythm of the house itself. Lila was rarely seen outside her room now. When she appeared, she moved silently, eyes wide and unblinking, her presence almost spectral. Once, Daniel followed her down the hallway. She stopped at a corner, staring at a wall as if it were an open door. "It's hungry," she whispered, "and it always remembers who looks." That night, Daniel lay awake listening to the hum. It had grown louder, deeper, almost melodic in its resonance. He realized the East Room was no longer confined. It was everywhere now, in every wall, every corner, every shadow. It whispered his name softly, persistently, luring him. Unable to resist, he rose and carried the box from under his bed. Its weight was comforting, a tether to reality. The photographs inside had shifted again. Faces smiled wider, eyes hollow, stretching beyond the boundaries of the paper. One image showed him standing in the hallway he was currently in, staring at the very photograph he held. A reflection of reflections, layers of existence folded in impossible ways. The wallpaper along the east wall began to ripple faintly, the outline of the hidden door shimmering beneath. The hum intensified, vibrating against Daniel's bones. He felt it tugging at him, pulling him toward curiosity, toward fear. He froze, clutching the box. Shadows began to gather along the walls, elongating unnaturally, forming shapes vaguely human. The whispers multiplied. "Daniel, come, see, stay." From behind him, Lila's voice rang out sharp and urgent. Pretend like it doesn't exist." Daniel obeyed instinctively, closing his eyes and whispering his mantra. "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The shadows wavered, uncertain. The hum softened slightly. The door shimmered once more, then disappeared. The hallway returned to normal. Daniel exhaled, relief mixed with fear. He understood now that the room's power was subtle and relentless. It did not need walls to exist. Its influence could bend perception, distort reality, and reach into minds. The box pulsed lightly, almost alive, as if responding to his fear. Daniel placed it back under his bed. He knew he would have to continue pretending, day after day, night after night, for the house did not forget. The East Room existed, eternal and patient. And Daniel knew that one day it would call for more than observation. It would demand recognition, participation. For now, he had survived another night. And for now, pretending was enough.
The days dragged forward in a surreal rhythm. Daniel moved through the house carefully, each step deliberate, each glance calculated. The east door never fully disappeared. It lingered, a faint shimmer behind the wallpaper, always at the edge of perception. The hum remained, low and persistent, threading itself into his thoughts, becoming as natural as his heartbeat. Lila remained silent most of the time, watching, waiting. Her presence felt less comforting and more like a reminder that the house was always attentive. Once she whispered, "It learns faster than we do. Watch carefully, pretend carefully." That night, the pull of the East Room was stronger. Daniel felt it in the air, in the vibrations of the floor, in the way shadows leaned toward the hallway. He carried the box from under his bed, its weight grounding him as he approached the staircase. The wallpaper along the east wall rippled faintly,
revealing the doorframe again. He could hear whispers from beyond. "Daniel, Daniel, come, see, stay." He hesitated, heart pounding. The box vibrated softly, as if aware of his fear. The photographs inside moved subtly, faces shifting, eyes following him. One photograph depicted a scene impossible for him to have witnessed, a version of himself standing in the east room, staring at the doorway he had yet to enter. The hum escalated into a vibration that pressed against his skull, echoing in every corner of the house. Shadows stretched along the walls, curling toward him, humanoid yet fluid, impossible. Daniel froze, clutching the box. Then Lila appeared at the far end of the hallway, her eyes wide and intense. "Pretend," she commanded. "Do not give it your fear." He obeyed, closing his eyes and whispering his mantra. "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The shadows wavered, the vibration softened, and the doorway shimmered once more before vanishing. The hallway returned to its normal appearance. Daniel exhaled, relief mingled with dread. He understood fully now. The East Room was not confined to a physical space. Its power was insidious, psychological, omnipresent. Every object, shadow, and whisper was its extension. He placed the box back under his bed. The hum persisted, soft now, like a distant heartbeat, but the warning was clear. The room's patience was infinite, its reach unending. Daniel knew that surviving required obedience and pretense. He had learned to deny, to ignore, to act as though the room did not exist. And for now, that was enough. But deep in the pit of his stomach, he knew the East Room would never be satisfied. It was waiting, always watching, always patient. The house was alive, and the room eternal. Pretending was survival. Daniel whispered to the darkness, a quiet vow. "I will pretend, always."
Weeks passed in a tense, unnatural rhythm. Daniel had grown accustomed to the constant hum, the subtle distortions, and the ever-present awareness of the east door. It had become a part of his consciousness, a pulse behind every thought. Leela had become nearly spectral, her eyes unblinking, always observing. She moved silently through the house, often disappearing into corners, only to reappear elsewhere, as though she were a guide for Daniel, or perhaps a sentinel of the house itself. One night, the pull of the East Room intensified. The wallpaper along the wall shimmered faintly, and the hum rose in pitch, vibrating against Daniel's chest and skull. The box under his bed thrummed softly, as if resonating with the room's anticipation. Daniel approached the staircase slowly, clutching the box. He knew that the door was waiting for him, and that the moment he acknowledged it, everything could change. The whispers began again, soft but insistent. "Daniel, Daniel, come, see, stay." He stopped. His heart pounded, his mind screamed to flee, but he remembered Leela's words, "Pretend." He closed his eyes and whispered, "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The hum softened slightly, but the wallpaper continued to ripple. Then the door teared fully, shimmering, almost alive. Shadows pooled around it, twisting unnaturally, stretching toward him. He could feel the weight of the room's awareness pressing against his chest, pulling at his soul. Daniel swallowed hard and forced himself to step forward, just past the doorway. Nothing happened. The shadows recoiled slightly, and the hum returned to a steady pulse. He exhaled, a wave of relief mixing with terror. From behind him, Leela whispered urgently, "Do not look, do not touch, pretend it is not there." Daniel obeyed. He walked past the shimmering door,
as if it were not real, as if it were merely a trick of the light. The shadows lingered, but did not follow. The hum softened. The wallpaper became smooth once more. But the house was not done. That night, Daniel dreamed of the East Room. In his dreams, it was infinite. Hallways folded into themselves, doors led to nowhere, and shadows with impossibly wide smiles whispered in a chorus of voices, all calling his name. The box floated before him, spilling photographs that showed events that had never occurred, impossible variations of himself and his family. He awoke in a cold sweat, the hum vibrating faintly in his skull. The box under his bed now felt heavier, almost alive, as though aware he had seen too much. The house had made a statement. It was patient. It was eternal. And it was aware of him in ways he could not fully comprehend. Daniel understood now that the East Room was not just a room. It was a force, a presence, a fragment of the house that transcended walls and doors. It reached into perception, memory, and fear itself. Pretending was no longer just survival. It was the only defense against something that could manipulate reality itself. He whispered into the darkness, a vow steady and resolute. I will pretend, always. And the hum pulsed, softly, almost approvingly.
Time became almost meaningless in the house. Days blended into nights, and Daniel felt the rhythm of the East Room in everything. The floorboards, the shadows, the hum that never ceased. He had learned the patterns, the subtle cues that indicated the room was aware, always watching. Leela's presence remained a constant silent warning. She moved with an uncanny grace, her eyes following him, her lips parting only to whisper reminders. Pretend, don't see it, don't acknowledge it. One evening, the pull of the East Room intensified. The wallpaper rippled more noticeably this time, the outline of the hidden door shimmering as though it were breathing. Daniel felt the tug in his chest, a combination of fear and curiosity that was impossible to ignore. The box under his bed vibrated softly. He took it in his hands, grounding himself with its weight. Inside, the photographs had multiplied again. Faces twisted into impossibly wide smiles, shadows stretching from corners into the images. One photo showed a scene that Daniel knew had never happened. Him standing in the East Room, staring at the doorway, his expression of terror perfectly captured. The hum escalated, vibrating against his skull, and from somewhere beyond the walls, whispers overlapped. Daniel, come, see, stay. He froze. His mind screamed to flee, but he remembered Leela's warning. He closed his eyes and whispered, It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there. The shadows along the hallway walls twisted and recoiled slightly. The door shimmered one last time, then disappeared, leaving smooth wallpaper. The hum softened, but never truly vanished. Daniel understood the room's nature fully now. It was not merely a physical space. It was a presence, a fragment of the house itself, capable of manipulating perception, memory, and fear. Every object, every whisper, every shadow was its extension. He returned the box under his bed, its weight a tether to reality. The East Room's influence remained, subtle but omnipresent. He knew that one day it would demand more than just observation. It would demand recognition, participation. For now, pretending was survival.
but he sensed the patience of the house was infinite. The East Room would wait, watching, always patient, always eternal. That night, Daniel lay awake, listening to the faint hum, feeling the weight of the house pressing against him. He whispered into the darkness, a vow repeated like a shield. I will pretend, always. Somewhere in the depths of the house, the East Room pulsed softly, almost approvingly.
The house had settled into an uneasy rhythm. Daniel moved through it cautiously, aware of every creak of the floor, every flicker of shadow. The East Room was a constant presence in his mind, even when it could not be seen. Its hum threaded through every corner, every whisper of air, embedding itself in his thoughts. Lila, ever watchful, no longer needed to speak. Her gaze alone warned him, reminded him to pretend, to act as though nothing was wrong. The fifth plate remained on the table, a silent sentinel that glimmered faintly under the lamp's light, a reminder of the room's presence. One night, the pull of the East Room became unbearable. The wallpaper along the hallway shimmered visibly, the outline of the hidden door vibrating faintly. Daniel felt the tug in his chest, a strange mixture of fear and compulsion that threatened to overwhelm him. He carried the box from under his bed, its weight grounding him, and approached the staircase. The hum grew louder, filling every inch of the house. Shadows along the walls elongated unnaturally, creeping toward him in slow, deliberate waves. Whispers came from the walls, overlapping in a chorus of voices. Daniel, Daniel, come, see, stay. He froze, clutching the box. The photographs inside shifted violently, faces twisting, eyes hollow, mouths stretching impossibly wide. One photograph depicted him standing inside the East Room, even though he had yet to step inside. The image seemed alive, pulsing with the room's awareness. Lila appeared suddenly at the far end of the hallway, her eyes wide and intense. "Pretend," she shouted. "Do not let it see your fear." Daniel obeyed. He closed his eyes and whispered, "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The shadows hesitated, wavering. The hum softened, dropping to a faint pulse. The doorway shimmered one final time, then vanished completely. The wallpaper was smooth, undisturbed, and the hallway looked ordinary once more. But Daniel knew better. The East Room did not need to be visible to exist. It was everywhere, in every corner, every sound, every shadow. Its patience was infinite, its awareness absolute. He returned the box under his bed. The hum persisted, soft and constant, a reminder of the room's omnipresence. Daniel understood the gravity of his vow. Pretending was not a choice, it was survival. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering to the darkness, "I will pretend, always." The East Room pulsed somewhere deep in the house, eternal, patient, and waiting.
The house seemed to breathe around Daniel, alive in a way that no one outside could understand. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls, stretching longer than they should. The hum of the East Room pulsed constantly, threading through the floors and walls, vibrating against his bones. Lila remained silent, her eyes fixed, unblinking, like a guardian or a warning. The fifth plate on the table glimmered faintly in the lamplight, an ever-present reminder that the East Room's influence extended beyond the door itself. That night, the pull of the East Room became almost unbearable. The wallpaper rippled, shimmering like liquid, revealing the faint outline of the hidden door. Daniel felt a tug in his chest, a mix of dread and curiosity that threatened to overpower his resolve. He carried the box from under his bed, its weight grounding him, and approached the staircase slowly, deliberately. The hum grew louder, filling every corner of the house, vibrating through the walls and ceiling. Shadows pooled along the edges of the hallways, coiling like living things, reaching toward him. Whispers filled the air, overlapping in a chorus. "Daniel, Daniel, come, see, stay." Daniel froze, clutching the box. The photographs inside shifted violently, faces stretching impossibly wide, eyes hollow and unblinking. One photograph showed him standing inside the East Room, even though he had never entered. The image pulsed with awareness, as if the room itself were alive within the paper. From the far end of the hallway, Lila stepped forward. "Pretend," she urged, her voice sharp and unwavering. Daniel obeyed, closing his eyes and repeating his mantra. "It isn't real. It isn't there. It isn't there." The shadows hesitated. The hum softened slightly, and the doorway shimmered before vanishing entirely. The hallway appeared normal again. Daniel exhaled, relief and terror mingling in equal measure. He understood fully now. The East Room did not need a physical space. Its presence extended into every corner, every object, every shadow. Its patience was infinite, and its awareness absolute. He returned the box under his bed. The hum persisted, soft but relentless, a reminder of the room's eternal presence. Daniel knew survival required constant vigilance. Pretending was not optional. It was a lifeline. He lay awake through the night, whispering to the darkness, "I will pretend, always." The East Room pulsed somewhere deep in the house, patient and eternal, as if listening. Daniel felt its presence in every creak, every whisper of wind, every shadow that moved against the walls. He understood now that it was not bound by doors or walls. It existed wherever he was, waiting, watching, always patient. Morning came, but it brought no relief. The hum remained faint, insistent, threading through the walls and floors. The fifth plate on the table glimmered in the daylight, an ever-present reminder of the unseen room. His parents moved about as if nothing was wrong, and Lila's eyes followed him silently, warning him without words. Daniel realized the truth. The room, his family's secret, was not just a room. It was an entity, a fragment of the house that manipulated perception, memory, and fear. To survive, he had to pretend always, no matter how long. The act of pretending itself kept him alive, kept the house satisfied. He clutched the box one last time that morning, the photographs inside still alive with subtle movements, faces shifting, eyes following. He replaced it under his bed, a talisman against what he could not fully understand. And as he walked through the house, moving carefully, ignoring the fifth plate, ignoring the shadows, he whispered to himself, "It isn't real. It isn't there. I pretend. I will always pretend."
The East Room remained, patient, eternal, a silent reminder that some doors should never be opened, some rooms should never be acknowledged. And Daniel, for as long as he lived in that house, would pretend. Because in this house, pretending was the only way to survive. The hum continued, soft and constant, as if approving his vow, and somewhere deep in the walls, the East Room waited.
Time had become fluid. Daniel moved through the house as if navigating a maze of shadows and whispers. The East Room's hum was now part of him, a constant pulse echoing in his chest. He had learned to live in this delicate balance, pretending, observing, surviving. One night, the pole of the East Room became almost unbearable. The wallpaper rippled, the hidden doors shimmering faintly. Shadows pooled, twisting unnaturally along the walls. The box under his bed vibrated, alive as if sensing the tension. He clutched it tightly, repeating his mantra. "It isn't real. It isn't there. I pretend. I will always pretend." The shadows hesitated. The hum softened. The doorway shimmered once more, then vanished. Daniel exhaled. The room had been acknowledged, denied, and survived. For now. He understood the truth. The East Room was not a place, but a presence. It was patient, eternal, and aware. Every object, shadow, and whisper in the house was its extension. Survival meant pretending, denying its reality, and living cautiously within its watchful gaze. Daniel moved through the house, careful, deliberate. The fifth plate glimmered faintly on the table. Lila's eyes followed him, silent yet knowing. His parents remained oblivious, unaware of the room or its influence. And Daniel whispered into the darkness, a vow that would sustain him for the rest of his life. "I will pretend, always." The hum pulsed softly, approving, eternal. Somewhere deep in the house, the East Room waited. It always waited.